Morning. Sorry, I'm tinkering a bit. Hang on. I've fucking got recapture for my. Let's play a game, shall we? Let's do a let's play of recaptures and see how we go. Select all squares with vehicles. I don't know. Seems like a bot might be able to detect that. But anyway, whatever. Oh, fucking traffic lights. What the fuck? Hang on, I'm trying to get in so I can see chats. Hang on, one sec. Turns out everyone seems to think I'm a fucking spammer lately. Cool. Must have a virus. Morning. Still getting organised. This is more of an impulsive thing. I decided this morning that I wanted to stream. Here's my coffee. Also, this decision to have controlled lighting is probably not very good either. Well, whatever. So, hope everyone's keeping well. Yeah, so there's a lot going on at the moment. And I woke up this morning and I just thought I'd have a bit of a moan. Which is that I actually start my Masters in International Relations this week, which is fun because obviously you see that. I mean, I know quite a bit about this stuff anyway, but I thought let's formalize it, let's update it. You know, like I was doing psych, but I just figure that I'd always just end up going back to policy work and politics, and you know, as useless as it is, I always just end up sort of gravitating back in that direction. So let me just adjust these things. Hang on a sec. This light situation is just not fucking acceptable to me. That'll do. Anyway. Okay, that'll do. It's not that good, but whatever. So give me a minute to tinker with my lights, because otherwise it's just going to distract me the whole fucking time. Who cares? I don't do this for a living. Who gives a shit? This is you get what you pay for. Content wise, you get what you pay for, right? There you go. Okay, so for the 5 of you that pay for this, sorry, I'll give you a refund, whatever. Not a guarantee. Anyway, sorry, it's always that's the thing about when you've got, because this is just a kit lens, right? So it's just one of those gear things where you need that constant balance between sort of the lighting and the lens and the like ISO and like, I mean, you know, people who know photography know this stuff. It's not just point and shoot stuff. Honestly, like people who use their iPhones for fucking YouTube videos and go, oh yeah. So no, if you want to actually have like, you know, that said, the iPhone would probably be better. Also my face is like, I've got like, it's actually a big part of just mostly being vain because I've got dry skin at the moment. So it's showing up more on camera. So anyway, it's more vanity than anything else. See, look, already my foundation has gone and fucked itself. Hey, look, let me fix my face. Let me fix my face 1 sec. Hang on, it's going to bug me the whole time. Let me just switch. Let me put an intro on for a sec. 2 minutes. Let me fix my nose. right, we're back. It's only marginally better. Sorry about that, but, fuck it. Like I said, I am literally the only person with a shrinking audience. It's all right. I wonder why that would be. Anyway, it's all right. I'm just going to turn this shit off. I was actually trying to make it so that I wasn't dependent on sunlight and all of that sort of stuff for lighting, but it just looks so artificial, and I'm not like, it's almost like these things are someone's job or something. And you have to learn these things. It's like they're technical, and I've got so much technical shit already that I need to learn. Fuck this lighting bullshit. Anyway, if you actually if you actually care about what you do, you try to do it correctly. And sometimes, unfortunately, those people, I'm just doing what I do. So, I don't know if anyone's watching. I probably had people drop off because people don't give a fuck. But anyway, so let's go. I'll leave you there. Tane's in a good mood today. Can you tell? Good mood. Let me fix this. Hang on. Let me fix my face. This is probably more interesting than what I've got to talk about anyway. Because of all the fucking perverts that are online. If you're a woman, I could just be talking about politics, but you're more interested in my lips anyway. And I don't have that shit going for me, so we'll just do this, shall we? Anyway, I was fucking with the lights. I apologise with the lights. All that stuff. It's a bit crap, but that's okay. I'll make do. So this is the problem. This is I know photographers have this problem as well, because early in my career, I did a lot of work with photographers, and there's these people that would go, oh, what camera do you use to get your photographs? And they go, well, actually it's on manual mode, and it requires a lot of skill and technical stuff. And if you've ever bought an SLR and wanted to learn photography, you'll understand sort of where I'm coming from. And it's the same thing with websites, Wix, Squarespace, all those things. Everyone thinks these things just happen, and that, in order to, because they've used a website on Wix, or they've done a Squarespace website, or, they can shoot a video on a fucking live stream. They don't understand the sort of the work and the technical stuff and everything that happens underneath that you take for granted. And that's why, when you work in user experience, your whole job is this is the great irony of working in user experience, I think, is that my job is to make you not think that this is complicated. And that's the job of a user experience person, is to make things sound simple. And that's going to lead into fucking Ukraine and war and shit too. It's also going to lead into the cabbage thing, but that's just more. It's also just why I'm in a general bad mood. Everything seems to, with me, I tend to displace on random things. I remember the series True Blood, right, where her grandma died and she freaked out over the pie. That's how I work. It's oh yeah, the world's fucked, everything's fucked. I internalize all this, I'm chill about everything, and then all of a sudden, cabbages are $6, and I'm like, all right, that's it, it's all over. And I fucking, obviously I've learned to not transfer that anger onto other people, because that's not appropriate. But I tend to catastrophize over little things because I'm feeling the big shit. So I focus on the tiny little details because the big shit is just so overwhelming and afraid. And when you're going through that sort of mood dip, I've always had this sort of depressive cycle thing go on, and I know that it passes. And I think that most, it's just, I think if you're not a little bit, I think in the shadow of all of this shit that's been going down, if you're not a little bit, I'm not normalizing depression, because obviously there is still, if you're depressed, you should still seek help. But if you are a sort of long time sufferer of, trauma and pain, and you're resilient, and you go through all of these cycles where you start to go, well, it's not always me, it's actually a little bit the world. That's the situational depression versus clinical depression, right? I tend to suffer depression, but I manage so long as situations are, fairly okay. I'm also good in that sort of initial part of a crisis. So, the last year or so, last 2 years, it's all pretty cool. I've managed because I'm used to crisis. I'm used to fucking poverty. I'm used to this, study politics. I analyze all this stuff. But there does come a point, I think, where you got to switch this shit off, and you just got to not And I'm sure a lot of people are feeling this way at the moment. And that's why, that fatigue. And it's not, and then again, you say, oh, I'm over COVID and we just got COVID fatigue, and go, oh, that's good for you. You can have fatigue because that's a luxury to have fatigue because you're not on the front line. You fucking no. Just fucking stop it. Stop it. Stop it. It's okay to feel my biggest concern, I think, with a lot of, and I think this is largely, and this is just when you eldest child, when you grow up in the environment that I grew up in, around the people, you have a lot of sort of struggles, you have a lot of disadvantage, and you're always working. Like I'm always working. Even when I'm not working, I'm thinking about working. And you never really, and it's not even just about working as such, but it's just that survival mode thing. Like survival mode can be material as well as emotional, right? And it's sort of like when there's just this low level simmering that happens over a course of a period of time. Eventually, it just becomes unsustainable. And what I think is going to be happening. So I'm having my first coffee too, so that doesn't help. But I think what happens is that those who have been fairly tough during this thing, like I would say that I'm used to rolling with things, having sudden loss of employment or sudden shocks to things. That's part of being in business, right? Especially the digital business, constantly changing, constantly having to evolve, constantly having to pivot, always, mansplaining, fucking, all of this stuff. Everyone, understanding sort of on the technical side, sort of what's happening. Again, that's that intellectualization that I do with trauma. Like that's why I know so much about brain tumors and I know so much about medical shit, because as someone who's had a lot of health conditions, it's it's life or death for me to know these things. It's a survival thing, but also just to rationalize it's how I deal with trauma, right? That's the beauty, the curse and the beauty of being smart is that you can you can look, but you're better at faking that you're okay. So anyway, I'm just rambling today because I'm a little bit fucking thrown by the nose thing. I'm just warming up, for the 3 people that watch my shit. So anyway, but I think that that's what people are struggling with at the moment. And I think that if anything, it's probably smart to not be spending as little time online as possible, because every time you go on there, I opened up Twitter this morning and it's just like, why does everyone suddenly have an opinion on Ukraine? And most people don't even know where it is. Okay. I don't know much about Ukraine. And I'm starting my first, I'm doing international relations now. I've got a political science degree, and yet all of these people suddenly have an opinion on stuff and are suddenly experts on things. And it's like, okay, well, I understand that you I understand that you feel like there's this need to have your hot take, but you may notice that I only talk about a handful of things. If you actually pay attention, even though I'll apply lots of bigger examples or you'll notice that I tend to not wander off lane very much. Like I talk about like a handful of things, like concepts, like, disciplines is probably the word, silo. I stay on my lane. My lane happens to cut across a few different things and have a large level of complexity to it, but I still know when to not have an opinion on things. And I don't have an opinion on, other than the information war that's happening online around Ukraine. That's my only real area of interest, which is that what's concerning to me is how few people know that everything is state-sponsored media at this point, for a start. So if they're claiming that, Russia is RT is state-sponsored media, but CNN isn't, or they're claiming that anything that happens organically on Twitter is organic, like we've talked about this in the previous stream, it's not organic anymore, okay? It's paid for. If something goes viral, there's a reason for it and it's got money behind it, okay? I know this. As a practitioner, I know this. You got to throw money on these things, okay? If there's a campaign, there's money behind it now. It's not 2009, okay? And also, I'm just going to turn this off because I think the lighting is pretty shit, but that's okay. It's all right. Anyway, I'll try to fix this stuff. But again, you can only invest in this stuff if people pay you for it, and people don't pay me for it. So fuck it, you get what you pay for. I just enjoy the technical side of things. So anyway, you're old and ugly, Tayo. Get used to it. So anyway, you need stronger lights and better stuff. So anyway, but I don't understand. Well, I do understand, obviously. Intellectually, I understand why this is happening. Okay. Which is that people feel the need to feel in control when there's fear. Also, people have jobs to do. Journalists whose job it is, if they have one job, it is to serve the interests of those who are making money from war and conflict. That's the job of a journalist. Okay. You get the occasional journalist that will, break ranks or, but the corporate media particularly now, if you're working in corporate media, you're bought and sold. You don't survive. Okay. If you're an independent person sitting on Substack or something like that, then there's, you're under attack and you're likely not going to be making much money. There's no real business incentive or profit incentive in selling the truth. There's no real, and when I say truth, I mean truth as in getting to truth, not claiming to tell the truth. There's a lot of people that do that. Tim Pool's a liar and does that every day. Like, media does that every day. There's the truth and the truth. Lionel Hutz, right? But there's no real incentive anymore. Like I think what's coming up for me a lot with this online stuff is how compromised this tool is and how the promise that we were given of being able of freedom of expression, freedom of being able to associate, of being able to express ourselves, being able to hustle our way into success. If you work hard, then there's going to be an audience for you. If you're truthing. If you're seeking truth, that there's a place for you in corporate media. I don't think that that's the case. And that the internet's for people who care about the truth rather than just a massive tool that is owned and dominated by US propaganda. And we're seeing that now with Ukraine, where how the fuck do people have an opinion on Ukraine all of a sudden? First of all, I don't know where the fuck it is, most of you. Second of all, like, how can you be claiming to know what is going on in Ukraine? Okay. When we are operating on US-controlled corporate media, state-sponsored media, state-sponsored social platforms at this point. You can split hairs on that they're a private corporation or whatever, but they don't. It's not, this is not how, there's a difference between how things operate theoretically and how they function. And the problem is that people are so fixated on splitting hairs over what the labels are. Funny that. It seems to be what people are obsessed with is taxonomy rather than function and outcome. And so you can sit around calling people, I don't even, like, the only reason I talk about the left or these things, right, is because that's how you meet people where they're at. You can't talk to people about concepts unless they have some sort of anchor or some sort of reference point in which to, see the world. But in reality, things are complicated. There's 150 million different ways of looking at the world, okay? In fact, there's probably just over 7 billion ways of looking and experiencing the world, okay? And all of those views need to be synthesized somehow into a vision for, like, I don't know about you, but, I'm turning 43 soon. You'd be shocked, I know, given my fucking vanity and, lights. There's a transition period there. We talk about transition period in international relations. I'm not talking about, I'm not an expert in international relations. I'm an expert in like politics and political theory, and I've only done a little bit of global politics. But now international relations is a sub-discipline of political science. But now I've decided to sort of specialize more in the international stuff. So you can go sort of, granular, local. You can also do Disney movies. No one gives a fuck about Disney movies. Or you can go sort of global. Global is where shit gets complicated real fast and it gets really messy, okay? And where there's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of things that are true at once simultaneously. If you're working in international relations or working in anything that involves lots of different interests, it's going to get messy, okay? Now, you know that story I told in my last, I think 2 streams ago about the pizza? How there's people that will burn shit to the ground to get what they want in a meeting, okay? That's going to happen with countries as well, okay? So this is where level heads need to prevail, but it's also where this game of chicken is actually legit terrifying that's happening. But also this fact that I think people need to stop assuming that anything that we receive at this point is not completely controlled and we have no way of knowing, okay? This is partially why I haven't really participated much in these conversations about sort of China or Russia or, those things, because I just assume that we're getting propaganda. I just assume that we're not getting the full story. I just assume that unless I see this with my own eyes, this is a good rule to have, unless I see this with my own eyes and ears and have the ability to pass and understand what is happening in front of my own eyes, that I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. And neither does a journalist sitting in fucking Melbourne talking about what the fuck's happening in Ukraine when they have no fucking idea any more than anybody else. Okay. But what we can do is get back to history and what history teaches us. We can get back to when you don't know, what you've got to get back to, and this is what I've done for the last few years, is get back to when you don't understand what's going on and you're confused and you don't know what's going on. What you can do is go back to what we do know to be true, okay? And this is why this whole science thing is important. The scientific method is important, okay? The political process is important. History, learning from history is really, really important. And that's because these things tend to come in cycles, for a start. History tends to repeat, okay? It does. It tends to repeat in varying ways, in different ways. And is that you, Jules? Oh, okay. Sorry. I heard someone's like, I thought that I might have fucked up my son's stream by streaming myself. And I thought he might be, heard someone tiptoeing around. It was Paul. But what we need to do is stop. And again, it's one thing to try and, we have access to all of the world's information, theoretically, okay? In practice, we don't. Again, how it works in theory versus how it functions. And unfortunately, the theory, and this distraction on theory, this distraction with theory, this distraction with taxonomy and labels and naming things and focusing on the granular details, focusing on, it stops you from feeling and seeing the real big picture that's going on, okay? That's what linked to what I was trying to say earlier. Somehow I end up accidentally coming back to what I said before, which is this is how I deal with trauma, and I know that it's not healthy. And this is why, I know through my own battles with mental health that this is a trauma response. This focusing on the granular and the granular and the granular is on a scale. Again, this could just be me. But people are not doing okay because the bigger picture here is that we are in a very precarious situation politically, but also in terms of, I'm not going to be one of those people. I honestly I'm in the school of people who believes that there's not really any incentive to escalate this war because everybody knows what the outcome is likely to be. Okay. And yeah, we can think about that outcome. I don't think that it's a likely outcome. Now, Caitlin Johnston, she's a great journalist. I follow her a lot. She wrote a thing about 6 months ago, I think it was. I should have looked this up. This is just now a digression, as usual. Just a digression. But Caitlin, she wrote a thing about how nuclear war will not happen on purpose. It will be an accident. Someone will just fuck up. So this is where this escalation makes me anxious. Okay. And the problem with the United States and the discourse in the United States is that they're always fighting more about who gets the button rather than the fact that the button exists. Okay. That button should not exist. Okay. Now, obviously, there's that argument that, this is the arms race, right? This is what happened in the Cold War, is that, if Russia's doing it, then we're going to do it too. And then we're going to argue and split over who gets control of the big button. Well, I don't want anyone to have the fucking button. How's that sound? I want the button to be destroyed and for us to move forward somehow. And this is where, and again, I come from that more Marxist perspective. I will see it as, a handful of people deciding the fate of millions of everybody else. And they don't give a fuck about us. They don't give a fuck about us. Individual people are collateral damage, much like on social media, you're a data point. Okay. And the people that are trying to push for war and the people that are trying to push for all of these fucking heinous things on a daily basis that has been building for years and years and years, okay, getting you to detach yourself from the world around you and detach yourself from your senses, detach yourself from, material reality, detach yourself from economics, detach yourself from everything. So that when this happens, you become a mule for, those 200 people that control everything. And I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. It's just power. It's how power concentrates. That's just the nature of things. Does that make you comfortable to know that it is now, 2 hours ago they announced that Biden and Putin were having a summit? Does knowing that Joe Biden and all of the people, don't forget, the people around Joe Biden and Putin and the people around Putin, okay? It's mostly the people around them, okay? Don't forget, diplomacy has, it's a whole thing. It's not just, they're not going to sit down and they're not going to talk it out. And this is, again, the other problem that we have is that people confuse, first of all, personal finances with national finances. So debt is not as bad as it is in a national sense in terms of the state as it is. When you print the money, you can make the money. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Individually, that's a problem. It's a different setup, okay? Because when you have debt, that is, anyway. But it's the same thing with politics and political relationships and personal relationships, is that we tend to transfer ourselves and transfer our own experience onto others. But we also will do that in terms of the, the anthropomorphizing power structures into individuals. Into systems. Okay. And so they're not just going to sit down and have it out like your mum and your brothers are fighting and like someone's intervening and, it's not a talk show. There's a lot of moving parts to these things. Okay. There's a lot of different interests. And I'm not sure. Again, a lot of this stuff is unknown. It really depends on your school of thought. Like there's several schools of thought on this stuff. Okay. One of them is that history tends to repeat itself. Okay. So if you look at what happened during colonization, in Europe and all those sorts of things, if you look at that, at some point when there is one big global power, there's one school of thought that says, well, eventually that global power will someone will pick a fight with that global power, and then there'll be sort of that multi, there needs to be that. Okay, hang on, let's circle back. Let me think. So after World War II, there was sort of, a recalibration of things. And again, I'm not going to go too much into this, but I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of moving parts here, but there's also a lot of different perspectives, which is that a lot of these arguments, you know how families have big fucking arguments and hold grudges for decades? Well, it's much like that. But my biggest concern is that people are going off into conspiracy land. Also misunderstanding when people say anti-American sentiment. And this is where I think the left need to be very careful as well, which is that you can be anti-unipolar power. Okay, so United States is a big global power. Since the Cold War ended and Russia collapsed, there's one global power. What you're seeing happen now is Russia going, fuck you, China going, fuck you, and they want multipolar. So that's called your unipolar versus multipolar, okay? I'm not going to talk about this because it's not really, I find it boring. But I'm just saying that you're seeing these things play out. But what we're seeing is a lot of this stuff is normal, but it's also quite precarious, okay? Because we didn't have like citizenship that was so, well, first of all, like the information flow, the control of information. That's what I'm interested in. Is that we're not getting information we're not getting truth. We're not getting truthful information. Okay. All we can do is start to be curious about history and what's likely to be true and what the likely scenarios are. And that's where theory sort of has its place. I could be saying that to rationalize my own trauma response, because I find that learning everything about something helps me to deal with the stress of like uncertainty, right? That's one thing that I do. But this is where Twitter is probably very handy for people, because, sorry, I'm thinking out loud here. I haven't really prepared for this. I'm just thinking. I didn't know what I was going to say today. Just making it up as I go along. But this is where Twitter is useful, because what it's doing is letting you focus on the micro. And this is something that I noticed when Twitter first was that, that real 140 characters and, small community, small, group of people talking back and forth, water cooler conversation. Okay. That was, I found that Twitter was always a great stress relief. When I was working for myself, well, I still work for myself, but, when I was freelancing and I was at home and I was doing design, I had kids, I was doing design work, coding, all that sort of stuff, right? Back in the early, whatever the fucks. It was good to connect with other freelancers and other people that were working from home. Like that was when the freelance life sort of really started to take off, was around sort of, 2008. So I could connect with other people. I could, banter, talk about client shit, talk about how they're frustrating, because, one thing about when you're in business, I know I'm going all over the place, but I've got to, we're just here to hang out. But, in business, it's very easy to get isolated, because especially if you're the only person who isn't working 9 to 5 in your, immediate network or family or whatever, it's very easy to feel isolated and like you're failing every day, even when you're actually just doing normal business shit. Okay. So like conflict with clients, like client management is a skill that requires, well, first of all, requires experience. Okay. But being able to negotiate sort of, sales, all of those things, right, that continuity. So sales, pitching, dealing with conflict, dealing with expectation management with clients is a huge one, where, like I have to deal with that every day, which is just like, well, you're asking for something that is like probably about $6 million to build. I think you need to adjust your budget or find more money. Right? That's a normal thing. Dealing with that. And also then dealing with clients who don't understand that, refuse to understand that, are bullies and bossy and shitty clients and all that sort of stuff. Like I don't do shitty client stuff anymore. I refuse. I'd rather not work at all than deal with a shitty client, because they actually cost you more money. These are things that you learn over time in business. But you don't know that this is normal business stuff until you talk to other people in this situation, and teaching people how to set boundaries with clients and how to say no and how to do a project brief, and how to conflict resolution with clients, how to deal with getting sued. Like, getting sued in my business is a big, in our industry is a big part. I would say that you're not actually officially in business in this industry till some client has sued you for something. Okay, that's just normal. Okay. So when you're those social networks, they're very much designed around shared pain and shared experience, okay, and shared perspectives. And a big part of this is part of what I'm trying to write in the book that I never finished. But the big draw of the internet for a lot of people initially was, sort of overcoming a lot of the social barriers that existed for a lot of people. Like I was able to have a career from here. Like, if you understand this town's not like other towns. Okay. It doesn't matter what industry you are in, there is a clique. And if you are not in that clique, you are like, it's just one of those things. Like, that like if I was going to do comedy, that's why I wouldn't even bother doing comedy. Okay. Here. Because there's two clubs, but the community, it's not so much about access, but it's also about the community, which is that because it's a small town and there's so few opportunities, and because we're so isolated, people are just sort of hardwired to compete and hardwired to see everyone as a threat rather than as a potential collaborator or someone that they can support. Or, like, I'm a very transactional sort of town. In business, and it doesn't matter what the business is, just transactional. That transactional mindset just trickles all the way. It's the only thing that trickles down. It trickles all the way through our culture, which is that sort of it's quid pro quo. It's not just like, if you're a relational thinker like me, where I will help someone. Like, I had to learn not to help people. Okay, because I found myself constantly being taken advantage of, or when you're of use to somebody. Like, because when you're talented and you're generous and and you're smart and those things, there's people that will push those boundaries and use you, right, and take advantage of you. That happens more here than anywhere else. But what the internet did was enable me to be a relational thinker for the way that I ran my business was very much relational. Now, I'm not saying it went fucking great. I'm saying a lot of American culture is very transactional as well. But I had, clients in the UK, I had clients elsewhere in the world where it was more understood and that we could bridge those cultural gaps. But we could also bitch with other people about things that, were stressful, that we weren't alone, okay? And this is, it doesn't matter whether it's illness, okay? These communities formed around sort of fans, but also around pain. And the problem is, and pain and trauma and shared experience. And this is the problem that we've got right now, is that people seem to think that hasn't been weaponized. And they also think that this hasn't completely shifted and changed to the point where it is actually now the bullies are basically, I mean, I could tell you now, I signed up to the internet, okay? Well, signed up. When I became an internet enthusiast, okay, and thought this was the next great big thing, because I didn't really fit in with other girls. I didn't fit in. I was, very soft, very, I didn't relate. I had trouble relating to people. I generally have trouble relating, to people in this town. Okay. And I found the internet was a way to escape that stuff and escape all those things that made me who I was. This is a chapter called ASL, right? For the nerds in the back. But what this was, but I escaped those markers, but I also escaped the people who didn't understand me and bullied me. Okay. I was bullied. And I was there to escape these fucking popular kids who, girls who only cared about like makeup and being stupid and, not being smart and superficial and, all of that sort of stuff. That was what I sort of signed up to escape. and build a life, carve a life for myself outside of a culture that was not for me. I found a culture online that was for me. And I'm not unusual. I'm not alone. I'm not dissimilar, okay, from most people. But what there is, this is where, you know, the normies moving in was quite a spectacular coup on their part, which is that these people that we tried to escape and have just taken everything over. Okay. The media, just the advertising agencies. Okay. So within 10 years of me, about 2012, advertising agencies, some of the earlier ones are a bit earlier, but 2012, mainstream advertising agencies decided that they were going to go digital and be digital agencies. And about 2016, they decided that they were going to be doing sort of IT services and strategic sort of UX work as well. So it became centralized in that regard. So the big ad agencies started to take control over messaging on the internet. Rather than it being its own specific discipline, it just became advertising agencies that built the websites, not specialist website companies. Same thing with social media. Social media became media companies, not technology companies. And this is where people need to get clear where this impacts something as important as war messaging and propaganda. And how to think critically about it, which is that there is no such thing as benign media when you can ban people, okay, and when you can moderate out of, you know, them being heard, okay. You're going to be getting a letterboxed or highly controlled opposition or controlled version of everything that happens. And that's been happening since about 2015, 2014. Okay. It depends on where you focus, where you put your energy and where you focus your energy. Or sorry, where your focus is when this happened. This has happened, you know, over and over again. But the great bait and switch happened with Facebook and Twitter becoming. It really did happen with Silicon Valley. This big bait and switch. Okay. Where the thing that we signed up for, which was a life that was alternate to the one that was repressing us and oppressing us. And we found a way out of it, and we found an option outside of that, which was that the dumb rich kids ruled the show at high school, and we went on the internet to escape the dumb rich kids. And now if I want to escape the dumb rich kids, I get the fuck offline. Okay, and that's what links back to the Ukraine thing. It's the biggest myth that exists right now is the myth that the internet is still ours. Okay. Now, obviously I've been watching a lot of these. I'm trying to watch less news, mostly because it affects my own fucking mental health at this point, because I'm not doing so great. I'm okay, but I'm not doing so great. Because this stuff, it does. It's just, you know, it takes its toll, especially I think it's I think it's more stressful being uncertain than it is to be certain, as we know. Okay. Well, I don't think that. That's true. And so learning to sit in uncertainty is something that I've had to work really hard at, because I'm somebody who, again, that control thing, I need to be certain. And I'm seeing everybody else doing this. But the problem is that their certainty and their doubling down over this culture war shit or whatever is actually doing damage across the board in other areas that they didn't quite expect. And so, because I've just been studying the sort of shift in discourse and the patterns, and, you know, because I understand how people interact with technology better than most, I'm seeing that people are not okay, and they're getting lost in the weeds of things in order to feel in control of something that's not necessarily certain, okay? Because we've come out of something that's been quite scary. for the last 2 years, which is that sort of constant entropy that comes with this stuff. Failing leaders, okay, everywhere. Even the good ones fail, to communicate. We live under a pretty good one, and not nationally, but under our state, we've probably got somebody who, is pretty well showcased as a good leader and a good person and good communicator around the policies. But the thing is, there's always going to be people who disagree. There's always going to be people who are cracking the shits. There's always going to be people who are holding everybody else hostage because they're scrambled in the fucking head and they've lost it, and they're not willing to compromise. And so this is where, I just find it bizarre that people just have an opinion on these things and they don't know anything about the fucking things. Well, I don't even claim to know much about the situation in Ukraine because it's not my area of focus. I'm interested in educating people about propaganda, and I'm interested in educating people, sort of basically leading you to be interested enough to learn stuff, because apathy is the biggest problem in politics. It's not too much information that's the problem in politics. It's the opposite problem. Okay. And we've traded sound bites, 30-second news sound bites, for hot takes on Twitter. And nobody's actually learning anything or shifting, and we're sort of fast forwarding into the exact same situations, except now it's got more velocity, more aggression, and people are more polarized than ever. And that's very, very worrying, because also you should know that you're not getting reliable information from anywhere. Okay, you're not going to get it. And that means you need to sort of check out from it a little bit. If you're a high school educated person or a mathematician, fascio-communism, anybody? You're one of them people. I think the best thing that you can do, and this isn't me saying shut the fuck up, don't have an opinion. I'm saying, again, that being used, especially if you've got a platform, allowing yourself to be used in a certain way to push certain narratives actually has an outcome on the ground for everybody who has their bank accounts frozen for donating to a political cause that they agree with, whether you agree with it or not. That is just fucked up what's happening in Canada, okay? That is about civil liberties, and that is an oppression. I can't believe that they're uttering the words unlawful protest, okay? Now, again, that has a specific meaning. The fact that they're blocking traffic, yes. Again, there's grey areas there. It's not black and white, but the actions of government in terms of, and media, doxing people, okay? Freezing bank accounts of people, okay? It's, cracking down on cryptocurrency, which again, I'm sort of on the fence about. Again, it depends. But it's not so much about people are so busy arguing about the taxonomy and the pedantic and the semantics of these things, but they're not actually looking at the policy and the history around these policies. The Patriot Act was one. Everyone's lost their fucking minds. Okay, same thing. September 11th allowed for the most egregious fucking policies around internet freedoms that led us exactly here, to the point where we can no longer. The greatest bait and switch was the Patriot Act, which was that the United States government had everybody over a barrel, all the tech companies over a barrel, because of the Patriot Act, because they had this power now. To run surveillance on citizens. And only the tech companies that were willing to do that survived. Okay. And that's anyway, I wandered off on a fucking tangent. We're just chatting. This is riffing. The problem is there's going to be people who make a lot of money with certainty, because that makes you feel better. Certainty makes you feel better. I like feeling better with certainty, right? I've been dealing with fucking medical tests for fucking years and years and years for something that hasn't fully surfaced and hasn't fully shown itself yet, but it makes my life very difficult. Okay. Chronic health problems. I get it. When my grandma had the brain tumor, I was like, I didn't want to lose my grandma. Okay. So I learned everything there was about brain tumors because I wanted to feel in control of that fact. I wanted to be able to just manage that whole process as much as possible and feel in control. And social media was a big part of that, right? Writing jokes about this stuff, sharing the experience. And people came back to me and told me that, me talking about those things quite honestly made them feel better. And that's my goal here, is to just show that it's okay for things to be disorganized, confusing, distressing. It's okay to be depressed. It's okay to say that you're depressed. Okay. It's okay to say that you're fucking over this last couple of years without some fucking person going, blah, 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 which is also their fear response, which is to control others. See, I tend to try to control like my own response. I control myself with like these things. But there's people who like to try and control others. Okay. That authoritarian stuff comes out in times of like crisis. But this is where self-awareness comes in. Okay. Which is that you need to work on that need to feel in control. Because we're not. And there's nothing that can remind you that we are less in control than the fact that the world is on the brink of fucking nuclear war, which, again, I'm going to reassure you, I don't think it'll happen. I tend to be more in the Caitlin Johnson camp, which is someone will just accidentally fuck up. I don't think that anyone has any real there's no real interest in this happening, okay? I tend to be more in that sort of camp of people who think that, we're all sort of interdependent, and there's no real interest in these wars happening. Okay, Russia's always been a bit of a but that's it. Again, it's different stuff. I'm not going to talk about it. It's boring. And also, I just go, you know what? I started the stream saying like everyone's got hot takes. I don't say anything unless I'm certain of what I know. And all I'm saying is that based on history, okay, Russia is tricky. Okay, it's tricky because they got a legitimate axe to grind as well. Right? So it's like, okay, China, I'm not worried, whatever. I don't believe that there should be a single, but again, this depends on whether you believe there should be a single global power or not, and whether you think that leads to stability or fucking bullying. And I happen to be in the second camp. I don't think that anybody needs to talk about anyone else's crimes until we deal with the crimes of the United States government over the last, and especially their takeover and hostile takeover, not just of land, but of our brains. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, which is because I'm more concerned about the fucking fact that they, at least if they showed up with guns, we'd know we were being occupied and taken over and colonized. But I don't think that people are as aware of the fact that we are being colonized by consuming United States dominated social media platforms. And that seems to be a big concern that I have, which is that you guys, again, because if you're in America and watching this, or the UK and watching this, it might be, I think because I'm in Australia in particular, and particularly in Western Australia, okay, again, it's just I'm being uniquely positioned to see things that others don't see. But what I've seen in the last 28 years online is American brain rot really start to infect large portions of the population here. Okay. American propaganda. And that's worrying. It's worrying. At least when, because the online, there was at least some sort of differentiation between, Australia and American politics. Like the fact that people are talking about critical theory here as a threat, when it's like, well, no, actually, it's first of all, I mean, yes, it's been adapted into obviously, colonial studies and all that sort of stuff, but it's quite a narrow school. And the fact that Lindsay's work gets even any traction here is concerning to me, because our system is pretty much well protected against this stuff for a start. We've got a different process, okay, which is that the courts will figure it out. So if you're like fighting over bills, though I've never been one to fight over legislation because generally most of our legal system is fought out in court anyway, okay? It's more of a forgiveness rather than permission kind of approach, okay? That's probably not the right words, but I'm trying to explain it to ordinary people, okay? Beg for forgiveness rather than permission. Like if you break the law and you don't get if you do something and you don't get arrested, then it's law, then it's fine. You get what I'm saying? That's more our approach. Whereas in the US, it's heavily codified, okay? And in the UK, it's very heavily driven by common law and convention. Again, general differences, but we've got that sort of hybrid system where, individual liberty is the default. It's not codified, but it's the default position from which everything was built. And so that's the legal default and the way that it was designed. We don't need to codify our rights because of that convention. So, but what I'm seeing is that it's proving effective. Like I'm watching in the lead up to the election, I'm watching politicians talk about this far left, okay? What far left? That's meaningless, okay? First of all, there is more like left-wing stuff here in Australia than there is in America, but the way that they're using it in the pejorative, I don't know if it really lands the way that, first of all, I don't know if it lands. But second of all, a lot of these things are unknown at this point because we haven't really... I know I'm rambling. I'm actually just thinking and riffing out loud. I because we're sort of cut off and I'm seeing usually like, just trying to think of the right things to say here. Well, not the right things to say, just what my thoughts are on it, because it's pretty complicated. But I've noticed it is extremely noticeable. I can't think of the right words, okay? It's an obvious shift in how people are discussing politics, how people are discussing liberties and rights, how people are discussing policy that they don't know anything the fuck about. And it's coming from America. Okay. Now, the convoy is one part of this conversation. Now, again, this is where I'm like, fucking everything's fucked. Let's talk about it. But, I'm picking up lots and lots and lots of little changes that others don't see. And I think that things are getting lost, which is, well, first of all, the well-being of people who are consuming this shit. Second of all, how these narratives are being used by the powerful, even when they don't apply. Now, again, it's not the theory. It's not how the theoretical stuff, it's its function and how it functions, which is that if you believe that Australia is falling or that any kind of intervention by the state. Again, there's mixed feelings. This is where I can say one thing 10 minutes ago and come back and say the opposite, what feels like the opposite, because it applies differently. Again, it's not so much theory. Theory is, again, it's useful, but it's a distraction from function. In reality, the outcomes are complicated and it's usually 150 different things, okay, and lots of different perspectives. But that's why I'm also not very popular. It's also why no one listens to me. I know it's also because I ramble, but it's also because I'm not peddling any easy answers. I'm just sitting here asking questions and hoping that people come along and ask those questions with me. It's a different approach. I'm not really worried. I'm just sitting here talking and wondering, and as if we were having drinks. I'd be like this when we're having drinks. But what's becoming apparent is that there is an MO here, which is that, first of all, it is useful to distract. This culture war stuff is a big fucking distraction from anything important. Okay. Anything. If you know, and I understand you got to feel in control. The psychology of this cancel culture shit is shit's fucked. People are on Twitter, okay, and they want to feel like they matter. They want to feel heard. They want to feel in control, and they can do that if they tweet and fucking get in the paper about someone who fucking no hold somebody else. Then they might feel in control for 5 seconds. I'm not saying that's not the case. This is why I think deep reflection on how you interact with social media is important as well. I don't think people who are trying to cancel people or dogpile people or harass people or whatever are necessarily out to destroy people. I don't think that's necessarily their impulse. Some, yes. But people in groups are extraordinarily powerful. People in groups are extraordinarily sane still. But this is actually also, it's not really a psychosis that's going on. It is just a collective set of interests that happen to coincide and are guided by all of these technological advances and able to travel and have velocity and, are designed to remove the friction so that you think that, you might be getting that little hit of dopamine, okay? Think about the heroin addict that, or the person who might be suicidally depressed, okay? They're not thinking about the hurt that they do for others by doing it. It is a selfish thing. They're doing it to make themselves feel better. And they're thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about others. They're not thinking about the impacts of their actions. They're not thinking about that. But what online does is it allows you to find a community of enablers that stop you thinking about that. And also, if you happen to be one of the powerful people or media people, you end up existing in a place where you think that, you're doing the right thing. But really, you're just trying to get your fucking hit. Because we rationalize as much. We can intellectualize and rationalize and split with theory. There's a theory to justify all sorts of shit, okay? Nazis loved Nietzsche, for example, and, others. Okay, Stalin loved Marx. He wasn't a Marxist, but whatever, okay? These theories get used and abused. People can justify shit all they want, but to be able to actually face yourself and face honestly why you do what you do. Like, I'm the queen of bullshit, self-bullshit, you have to look really, really carefully at your motivations and what your true motivations are. And I'm pretty honest with myself, not always, but I like to be fairly honest. And I think that if people could just be a little more honest with themselves about why they're interacting in the way that they're interacting and reflect and go, okay, well, why am I doing this? Am I doing it because I am fucking scared and I want to feel like everything's okay, so therefore I'm just going to tell everyone that it's going to be okay because I want to feel in control? Or am I going to whip everyone else into fear because I'm afraid? And so at least when I'm afraid, I'm not alone in that fear. Am I just addicted to the internet and looking to, am I hurting and wanting to get the other guy who has hurt me because the policies that they support has destroyed my business? Or, you know, am I just traumatized by all of this stuff? You know, where can we go to talk about it? And that's my only, I think that's sort of my frustration, is that there's nowhere really there's no outlet anymore. This is what politics does to people. And this is why I quit. It's why, I didn't quit. But it's why I didn't think that there was a future in being in politics, because politics is all about optics. It's all about power. It's all about using your power rather than working on yourself. And again, I'm not saying that I'm not going to be in that sort of personal responsibility cult, okay? I'm saying there's a collective responsibility. You can, you know, oxygen mask, baby, a plane. Put your own oxygen on before you fucking help others, okay? Jordan Peterson might have said, clean your own. I'm saying there's good advice there. But again, those things get repurposed and weaponized. But in order to show up for others, you need to show up for yourself and be honest with yourself and be true with yourself about what your real motivations are for these things. And I'm not sure that people have their heads on straight. Also, journalists aren't paid very much anymore. The ones who succeed are the ones who are powerful and have a lot of money, okay? They're paid a lot. They've got no soul. The real journalists aren't paid enough to really put up with this shit. They make themselves a target. This is why I wouldn't bother doing journalism. I'd love to. I'd probably fit pretty well in that camp. Okay, but I don't pay anything. And there's no interest in truth. Okay. You're either basically writing ad copy for fucking War Machine, or you're copying so much shit that it's not worth the fucking $5 a month that you get on Substack for all this shit. There's better ways to make money if you're going to do that. You know, I said that like in digital. I said, so if I'm going to work in advertising, whatever, it's like, well, I may as well literally go and suck a dick, okay, because it pays more, okay? I'd charge more for a decent fucking, and I'm good at it, and it's quicker. Get it over with. Suck an actual dick. Less demeaning, okay? And you get more spare time. You don't work 14 hours a day doing that. So it's honest work. But I think this is where people are not really understanding things. And this is why I'm frustrated. And I'm just on stream just talking because I don't know what the fuck else to do. Because I can't write the book. No one pay me to write the book. No one reads what I write. No one reads anything. And if I do Twitter threads, it just feeds the problem and ends up being fucking used and no one reads it and all that shit. Whatever. There used to be a way to build an audience and make it viable online. Being yourself, being honest, speaking truth to power, all that sort of stuff. Now it's just pain. Okay? Those that are doing that still are either misled in thinking that, it's still possible. I don't think it is. Or, I mean, you're seeing this with all the political YouTubers and stuff, where they just talk shit to a tribe who throw money at them. They just create these echo chambers, create these fandoms, and politics has become about fandoms more than anything else now. They've all overlapped and they've all just collided into this weird fucking thing where those interests that want that to happen have no incentive whatsoever to help us or care about us or care about users or care about the ethics of what this is, which is that if you think that this woke shit is about the issues, then I don't know, I've got a bridge to sell you. It's perfect. It's so perfect, it must have been designed. Or humans are just fucking perfect and, this is just too many interests benefit from this fucking stupid woke shit. Because you can actually position everyone who questions anything, any narrative, any bullshit as hate speech. This is where we're heading. You can deem anyone who ends up on the street as a terrorist. Now, I'm not doing a slippery slope argument. I'm qualifying what I'm saying. I don't think it necessarily does lead here. See, the difference between me and someone like, Henny Pennies on fucking YouTube and Twitter is that I will only ever go as far as saying things are quite precarious. Okay. I will also say that because I know that history is cyclical, we're in a period of transition in history. Okay. I think that we may just be in a period of transition with superpowers. Okay. And people are flexing, and Russia's just, doing their thing to, sort of get back at the United States, because that's what they do. Okay. They're kind of, they're all goading each other and seeing what's going to happen. I think that's going to be fairly normal, okay, for a while. But it is also normal, and it's not unprecedented, okay? And this is where I think going back to what you know and what, is certain and what you have control over, and the things that you can control, the things that you can change. And the things that you can control and change is not sharing bullshit or not commenting on things you don't know about. Okay. Now, I just did that, but I'm just saying, just generally speaking. Okay. I'm very cautious about doing that. Obviously, I'll wander off on tangents, but I'll tell you when I don't know. So I don't know much about this stuff. Okay. I don't know the details of the Ukraine conflict, mostly because I'm not really, I'm trying to consume less news and more sort of research and more stuff. News cycle stuff is very stressful. But also I know theoretically that this is going to happen from time to time. Okay. It's happened several times in, in our lifetime, and it's going to happen in our lifetime. It's going to happen in lifetimes after that. Assuming that the climate doesn't fucking kill us before that, or assuming that, we don't deal with our emissions, or assuming that people don't start, hurting themselves or hurting their neighbours or hurting their families, or we don't die out for other reasons. Okay. Got food shortages here. Now, that was the $6 cabbage thing. Because we had a flood. But this is where it's like just this, I find it amazing. This is why I think we may just come out of this okay. It's part of the reason why I think we've come out of it okay. We just never fucking learn that capitalism is the fucking problem. We never learn. Which is that, so in Western Australia, we've got one big road, basically, that connects us from the rest of the country. One highway. So you can see how that goes well when you have your we've got two major supermarkets for now. You need to understand how this is set up. So you've got Coles and Woolworths, okay, the two major supermarket chains. Then you've got Aldi and some of those other, and then you've got a local thing like Spud Shed. You've got those sort of, local independents and those sorts of things. But mostly Coles and Woolworths own a large bulk of the supply chain. They own large bulks of fast-moving consumer goods, okay? So your retail sort of consumer goods, okay? So everything from, say, so over the last couple of decades, like we've seen everywhere else in the world, you've got this sort of concentration of ownership. So, so Coles and Woolworths, they own the department stores, they own the hardware stores, they own all of these things. So that concentrates. Woolworths own electronic stores, hardware stores. They got, Bunnings and Masters and, all those sorts of things. And they own all these, anyway. So this centralized I fell over my words. Hang on. Two major corporations control the large bulk of fast-moving consumer goods in this country. Okay. Now, they've been moving more and more towards centralized supply chain stuff. So from warehouses in New South Wales, which is, 4,000 kilometres away. Okay. What's that? 2,500 miles, something like that. Okay. But we've got one road between us and the rest of the country, one highway. Now, that seems a bit silly, doesn't it? One road and one railway. Okay. One road, one railway. It was mostly railway, actually. Sorry, let me correct myself. So you got one road, one railway. And everything sort of, all of our goods are sort of, let's centralize everything. Let's move everything over east. Now, I was doing some of this work with Woolworths, like, God, a decade ago, when they're talking about, all this algorithmic supply stuff, making sure that, everything is that just in time shipping, just in time supply stuff. And so what they do is they just assumed that everything would be fine, that railway would always be fine. So what happens is South Australia has a flood. Floods the railway. We don't have any food for a month while they clean up the fucking highway. And that's off the back of Victoria in the eastern states. So you got New South Wales, Victoria on the east. You got South Australia in the middle, Western Australia where I am, over there. On the west. 300 and something thousand kilometres. Sorry, 3,000 something kilometres. I haven't looked it up. You know what I mean. Large landmass, literally opposite ends of Australia, which is a big continent, okay? With one road. Imagine that, California and New York with one road between them. No food, okay? So that's what's happened here. So I have quite specific dietary needs, and I have been very, 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 very stressed out. Because, thankfully nobody fucking eats like gluten-free pasta even in a pandemic, so we know that. But that's where this whole panic buying thing, and it's just fed this machine. Like there's lots and lots of different forces at play here, but there's one shock and everyone thinks, oh, it's just one thing. Oh, one flood, that. It's like, well, no, because if not for Victoria also having problems with, the spread of COVID. And so they'd been panic buying there. So they're already having supply chain issues in the eastern states because of what was going on, okay? Also, our closed borders. Also this issue. And then, so, we've been without sort of, like our supermarket shelves are quite empty. Now people would go, okay, let's catastrophize this. Okay, oh, we're out of food. I trust my government. Believe it or not, I actually believe that our government would not let us starve. As much as I don't think that, hedge funds or the United States government or at the macro scale give a fuck about us, I do believe that I am very fortunate to have a government that will not let us starve, okay? They've been working around the clock. But also, okay, we've got so the reason why there's the two owners of the supermarket chains are, this is an example of how you can sort of pass laws, and this is sort of what happened with the Patriot Act as well, but you can pass laws or pass regulation or make exceptions, but the bad guys just sort of swoop in the background, okay? So we've got the ACCC in Australia, which is the Australia Anti-Corruption Consumer Corporation. That one. Basically regulates competition. Okay? America, close your eyes, close your ears, you're about to be traumatized by this. But what they do is it's the regulatory body that deals with, like antitrust, okay, all that sort of stuff. You understand. Like the Federal Trade Commission, I think is what it's called. What's it called in the United States? I didn't look it up because I wasn't going to talk about this on stream. I usually look it up beforehand, but I didn't. But that version of that. And so what they do is make sure that Coles and Woolworths are not allowed to collude. The word is collusion in theory, it's collusion to create a monopoly, because we effectively have an oligopoly, right, with supermarket chains. But you don't want that to become a monopoly, because then obviously the price of food goes up substantially, okay? And this is where, when I talk about $6 cabbages, I mean, that was IGA, but that's different. Because we don't have a problem with produce here, okay? That's the thing, is that it's available. What we have a problem with is a number of different factors. And so people turn around and say, it's this on Twitter, it's this one issue, it's this. It's like it's no such thing as this one issue. And unfortunately, the role of government is to balance that stuff. So what the ACCC did this week, and this is something that people need to pay attention to, because people are starting to get desperate. Like thankfully I can't eat much, so it doesn't really affect me. Okay, because I don't have a fucking stomach. I can eat a hamburger is 3 meals for me, right? That's. Speaking of, we're doing coffee. But I have almond milk in my coffee. That comes from over east. Okay. Those sorts of things. Gluten-free. Can't eat gluten. Okay. I'm very lucky that, we get a discount on Harvey beef because, where Paul works. But, I'm saying that, okay, so I'm just going to say that I'm very fortunate. So I have been largely untouched by this. But when you see grocery prices going up the way that they have, and like we're okay, like watching our rent has doubled. Okay. Utilities have pretty much doubled in the last, we've got solar and we still pay basically what we would pay for a full electricity bill 5 years ago on solar. Like this is just what's happening. Okay. And it's just like, this is why I'm so stressed about fucking money all the time, because I thought we were okay. And I burned it to the ground thinking we were okay. It's like, oh shit. First of all, I burned it to the ground. I made a bunch of assumptions. Here we go. Full circle. I made some assumptions that things would always be the way that they're going to be. Okay. I made an assumption that, certain salary is enough to be comfortable and good, and that I didn't have to work and I could actually pursue doing sort of educational stuff. Better than this, obviously. This one's a bit more of a rambly, is anyone around kind of chatty thing. But I want to just do more of this stuff because I want people to just understand that you don't have to be. I'm doing this deliberately because there's a lot of people who are very polished, making a lot of money, peddling bullshit, easy answers. And I would rather sit here and just go, you know what? I don't know about stuff. And it's okay to not know about stuff. Okay. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So I made some assumptions. Okay. I was going to talk about this thing. I was going to study this woke shit because I was like, what the fuck's happened to the left? Good faith. I went, what the fuck has happened to the left? Turns out that I just had a gap. The gap in my knowledge was that American history in terms of the culture wars. Okay. The history of the US culture wars is largely where this is coming from, and the cultural hegemony. Now, I started to study psychology because I was interested in sort of radicalization side of that sort of thing. But again, what I've realized as time goes on is that institution is somewhat abusive as well. It has its own set of, well, it's dominated by the exact same forces. So I wouldn't be able, unless I was going to do clinical work, unless you're in research. I started to see the research on radicalization and see how it was being used politically. And I just went, I can't do this research here either. It's going to be used. Okay, so what I needed to do was go, all right. So I'm just studying things for my own knowledge now. I'm not really doing it because I don't fit anywhere. Okay. So I initially started talking about this stuff because I saw this problem and I was like, what's happened to the left? I started talking to, I was like, okay, there's something happening here with online discourse that's shifted suddenly and changed, and it's just it's off whack. And obviously, because I'm used to Australian politics and used to things being a certain way, the discourse turning toxic, I had felt like I needed to warn people about this thing that's coming downwind, and I was watching it. And now I watched it just fucking take over everything. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, that happened. So in good faith, but I worked on an assumption. I worked on an assumption that I would be always able to make a living online by just, writing and organically, okay? That was an assumption that's now wrong, okay? It's proven wrong. That's changed. The situation has changed, okay? That is no longer true. So someone like me who's always been able to like hustle or carve or, set up a new website, set up a blog, find an audience. Whenever I decided I knew how to do this stuff, I did it for everyone else, okay? So that's how I do it. It's not just that I had an ethical problem with it. I just realized that it's kind of redundant now. Unless you're pouring $100 million fucking dollars on it, there's no point, okay? Probably not that much, but okay, it needs to benefit someone who's got $100 million. So there's that aspect. So I went on the assumption that if I just wrote stuff and did stuff and, produced content, that I'd find my audience. I'd get the ranking in the algorithm. YouTube was fair. It wasn't rigged. And I would be fine. I could talk about things because, I'm a good person and I don't, I'm curious, and I'd only talk about things that I know about. And I tend to, I'm good faith. Okay. And I don't cynically drive tribalism just for clicks. It's something that I won't do. But then I obviously, as I went through that, I saw that a lot of people are just doing that and they're not actually interested in the truth. They're not actually interested in that. That's the whole machine. The whole machine is talking about the culture wars dominated by Americans who are talking about this distraction shit, who are constantly working together to push their country into aggressive fucking wars and, bullshit about other countries. And, they're two sides of the same force and the same coin, and nobody seems to care about that. Okay? There are those that are cynically pushing for the interests, their own interests, like I've been, like people like Dave Rubin and Tim Pool, they're obviously, they're deliberately leaving stuff out. You can't get to this point in the culture wars online without being aware that you're at least a little bit full of shit and have to walk back on a few things. If they're not walking back on some things, then they're disingenuous. Also, you can tell who's gearing their content towards like profit and money and clicks and radicalization, and who's actually good faith, okay, and fucking up, okay? Shit's complicated. I turned off monetization on my channel for this very reason, because I didn't want that accusation. But so, that was one assumption, which was that doesn't matter. I know how to do this. I'll always be able to sell myself. That's fine. Just a matter of like focus and effort. That's not true. The other one was that the cost of living wouldn't double. So now I'm like, oh shit, what am I going to do? Like it's crazy, like how a high, not poor, not rich, but comfortable salary is now like, paycheck to paycheck. It's crazy what's happened. So again, two assumptions that I made. I made an assumption that things would always be the same. And this is what's happened with the internet. People assumed that it was always the same, that this was the internet that we had, and always will be, that we have freedom, that the internet is an enabler, and the bullshit that I've talked about. The internet is an enabler. We have access to all of the world's information and all of the ideas, when we don't. We're getting one side of the story on corporate-controlled social platforms that come from the United States, who have a vested interest, okay, in you believing certain things over at the expense of others. Now, I'm not saying that Russia's not doing the same fuckery. I'm not saying that there's not. I'm saying they're all doing this shit. But I'm just saying that we are on US media platforms. It is dominated by US media. They call Al Jazeera and CCP and Russian media and RT state-controlled media, but CNN's not. Why is CNN not state-controlled media? I'm in Australia. Why am I not getting geo-targeted alerts that this is US state-controlled media? We know why. Because it's the default, okay? And that is the narrative that people want to spin, okay? And this is why Joe Rogan rubs up against that. Yes, he's part of it. I got my beef with him. He spreads some bullshit too. He shouldn't be having people like Tim Pool and James Lindsay on there, because they're wrong too. They're pushing a certain fucking thing. That's the thing that you start to notice after a while, is how unified all these opponents are when war happens, or when this sort of, when it becomes geopolitical. You start to realize, where the loyalties really lie. Okay. Anyway, that was a side point. I wasn't fucking wondering. But I made these assumptions. I went on as if, I could always, every time nothing's ever happened, no problem. Okay? No problem at all. I just assumed that, we work hard. I think it's part of the reason why I've just sort of hit this funk in the last couple of years, was that I realized just what a lie this work hard thing. Because no one works. I work really fucking hard, okay? I have done nothing but work. I've never had a holiday. I've never had a break. I have always been doing something towards, merit, okay? Trying to, learn more, get more skills. Like, I've got so many different skills. I'm always studying. I'm always learning. I'm always reading. Always working. I'm always on a call. I'm always fucking, thinking about where the next invoice is coming from. I'm always thinking about, dinner, lunch for the kids. I'm always just fucking busy, okay? And I know we all have that, but I'm saying there's no, like, I exist as an example, and as an example of the fact that working hard is not enough when everything is rigged against you. Okay. And so like they went, okay, I think this is partially why. This is partially, I think I got really shitty actually with my grandma. She didn't mean it. But her whole life has been about like, her whole thing about me is like how I got out of like neglect and poverty and went to university. And I'm like, and that's like my crowning achievement. And it's just like, well, thanks for that. Like, I had a lot more potential than that. But people think that, once you reach a certain pinnacle and you go to university and you reach a certain status, that your life is golden or made. Like, that's a very boomer thing, right? She's not boomer, she's silent generation. But like, sorry, she's the one before that. She's like 86. But like, it's but this idea that somehow life doesn't change and that there's this linear pattern with life where you go to university and somehow you've just achieved all of that. Like, I did all of that and people still just think I don't know what I'm talking about, think I'm stupid, treat me like I'm stupid, act like they know more than me because they read a Wikipedia page on it. And I now have to get a second master's to prove that I fucking know anything about anything. But that's just my approach. Because I'd rather be me with, lots and lots of experience and knowledge and skills and actual skills. And I don't, rather than someone who's just a talking head with confidence on fucking YouTube. Now, the problem is that I've always done that at the expense of personal brand and audience building because, first of all, I was doing it for everyone else. Second of all, it's not really something I seek out. Like I'd started video to overcome overcome a fear of doing video, but also because people weren't reading the stuff I was writing. I was like long form stuff. I got a lot to say. I was trying to get people to be interested so I could write the book that I want to finish and write that I never get time to do because I'm constantly fucking working. And now with the cost of living being $6 fucking cabbages, I now will never write the book that I'm supposed to write. And that doesn't matter. And people will go, well, okay, well, why don't you just give up like 4 hours a day? Well, no, because I'm too busy getting another master's to be taken seriously so that I can raise money, so that I can, and it's like, but it's the same thing with digital, right? And it's like, well, why don't you just take on more clients? Yeah, well, have you worked with clients lately? They're all consuming 16 hours a day. That's my job. If you work in digital and you have clients, you work around the fucking clock and they call you around the clock. They email you around the clock. It's not viable. Okay. Also, like the kind of work that we do that I do is bespoke and it's not really something that, a lot of people want anymore or will pay for. And I value myself too much and my skills to fucking charge less than I'm worth in the market. Okay. So no, I'm not doing that. And that's the constant tension. So there's these things that I assumed were true. Okay. Now I think this is the difference between somebody who's like set in their ways and they, this is a middle-aged thing too, when the world just changes around you, when you resist it. I'm not resisting it. I'm just trying to figure out what the next move is. But I've been trying to figure that out for a couple of years now because I also know that YouTube's a dead end. I know that Twitter, like this, because if you didn't build a community sort of, 5 years ago, I was off building other people's communities. But if you don't build a community, didn't build it 5 years ago, the chances of having a real organic community that you, actually get traction and actually earn a living with is pretty much impossible unless you are sponsored or somehow interesting or somehow pre-famous, you've got something. So that's why, this is where I go, well, okay, as somebody who has like utilized this model and studied the model and fucking created the fucking thing for most people in many ways. I was a pioneer in this shit, okay? When it doesn't work, okay, this is why I'd given up on being polished because I know that there's no point. I can't compete. I'm just going to say what I want to say. So, I could come up and I could, write scripts and I could edit and I could prepare all these things and do all the things. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's not going to happen. So, it's been taken over by the bikini models and the beauty bloggers, and there's a political version of that, which is a loudmouth in a fucking beanie who's talking shit and escalating things and you know, like it's just insane. Anyway, so I made these assumptions. Same thing with Coles and Woolworths and the railroad, okay? South Australia has a flood and they go, what? We can't get food to Western Australia off the back of a pandemic when everyone's panic buying. Oh shit, what are we going to do? And so, you know, there's a period of time where there's no food here. And that's okay because, you know, they'll fix it. I have confidence in my government that they'll fix it. But what if you've got a government that doesn't fucking fix things? Okay, what if you've got, like the United States? Think about like Flint and their water and stuff. And you go, well, at least we don't live there. Right? Or they'll just go, oh yeah, fuck them. Whatever, they'll just move. See, this is where that neoliberal fucking mindset, that culture was like, well, if you don't like it, you could just move. Hustle. Work harder. And this is where it all just seems to come together into this big ball of bullshit where I go, well, what's the fucking point then? It's like, okay, $6 cabbage. $6 for a fucking cabbage. Cool. Couldn't get cauliflower because cauliflower's what, $8. It's like, okay, well, and also because we happen to rent because we can't buy a house, we can't grow our own vegetables. There's no point. Okay, because we would just be making another person's investment, person who gouged us for double rent because we were put out in the pandemic when everyone was like, you know, we had to offer above asking and he fucking took it. Okay, and he shouldn't have. And now we're paying more than it's worth, double what it's worth for a shitty house. And it's like, well, you go, what's the fucking point? All right, well, maybe I'll just go get another fucking degree then. That'll fix everything because hustling doesn't work. So I have to also acknowledge that, and again, it's not entitlement. It's not like, you know, I go, oh, well, I've fucking worked hard and like, you know, for a day. And it's like, well, no, what happened was every single time I've gotten to a certain level of success, some rich kid or some fucking corrupt person or dishonest person or, you know, someone who hasn't done the right things gets rewarded, and then they come and they steal from me and they steal from my shit and they, you know, all of that stuff. That's the history of my career as well, which is that there's no such thing as fucking merit. There's only psychopaths and money. Money and psychopaths. Psychopaths with money, that's what you get. Okay? If you're willing to lie and if you are driven by money, then you're going to be okay. All right? If you want to seek the truth and you won't accept money at the expense of your principles and values, then you will suffer. And I'm not martyring myself. I'm saying, like, I could actually just go, oh, fuck it. Maybe I should play the game. But once you reach a certain age, you go, you know what? Fuck it. I've earned my right. I've earned my, like, you know, time. And now I've got to fucking pay $6 for a fucking cabbage. Because, like, you know, our government and me didn't plan ahead. Didn't consider that this might actually change. Things might change, that something might happen. Which is that, you know, we now operate on an internet where there's no audience for me because they've all been banned or they're all on Getter, and that fucking thing is full of fucking psychos and fuckwits who are lying. Okay? They're all liars. And the whole thing is like the internet has become one big fucking reality show where you can say the most outrageous shit in the hope that maybe, you know, you might actually not have to face the real fucking pain that you're in or face your real fear while driving everyone into the fucking war. Now, I was talking about Coles and Woolworths. Coles and Woolworths. What Coles and Woolworths do, okay, so the ACCC, so you've got these organisations, right? So this is where we have to hold the fucking fort a little bit. Like, you have to, like, stop. Because this is where emergency powers become very complicated, and people need to also understand the difference between emergency powers and not emergency powers. They need to understand that there's temporary regulation and there's permanent regulation, and that, you know, like, you can't be for or against something. It changes and shifts depending on the environment, okay? So this is a good example. Same thing with the convoy, and this is why, again, that's more complicated. It's fucked up, but it's more complicated, okay? Which is that what you've got here is that you've got two corporations that control most of the country's food. Okay, there's exceptions, but largely that's the case. Rail gets cut off. They can't get food here. Their normal supply chain, so they can use air, but they can but also don't forget air travel is decreased as well. So again, it's a perfect storm. Okay. So they can't get as many loads over because they're not filling as many planes. It's like everything compounds. You've also got supply issues in the eastern states because of China. You've got the global supply chain is a problem as well. You've also got inflation, all those other things like the exchange rate. You can't get as much money for your dollar as usual because of the fucking shit in the US driving our fucking my arm. Lose 50 kilos, they said. I didn't tell you about that part, do they? Anyway, so this has an impact on, so the US, when we're dependent on the United States exchange rate, we can't get as much for our money in China, we don't get as much. So then there's, again, lots and lots and lots of different reasons and problems for things. And this is why Twitter is the worst fucking channel for this, because there's lots of different reasons for things. It's complex. So you got, so you can't get as much, for your money because US corporations are gouging everybody. China's seeing an opportunity to fuck with the West, so that, but also supply chain problems, also global transport problems, also, instability in this region because of, China and Russia and all that sort of fucking shit that's going on over here. Okay. But then you've also got, what was I going to say? Can't remember. So all these knock-on effects. And then you have one event that happens with like the railway breaking and you go, okay, food. And then you get everyone on Facebook blaming fucking Mark McGowan. And you go, well, no. This is the biggest mistake that we made was having one railway. Okay? That's a fact. Now, if you'd said there's people that said 10 years ago, well, you shouldn't just have one railway because what happens if that one railway falls apart? Or, Coles and Woolworths, when you're having conversations about having everything in Sydney warehouses or, everything run out of Parramatta, that what you would do is, what happens if something like this happens? What's your plan? Maybe we should actually consider what happens if we lose the rail. They made decisions based on the rail, much like I made decisions based on how the internet works. Okay, I made a lot of and that we'd worked hard and we'd earned a career, and that if I actually just worked harder, I'd be fine. Okay, that was a poor assumption. Okay, because I assumed that things would always be the same as they always have been. Same thing with the rail. Told me 10 years ago, I would have gone, yeah, probably. There's people that said, well, you probably should, tone it down a bit. And I go, oh, yeah. Nah, I know what I'm doing. I know the internet. I know how the internet works. I know that if push comes to shove, I'll be able to find my audience and it won't be an issue. Okay? That's changed. Because now, push comes to shove, you get banned or deplatformed or securitized and have your fucking bank accounts frozen, or you can be arbitrarily called a terrorist for sympathizing with a fucking protest. Okay, again, I see the other argument, which is when you're blocking shit, it becomes obstruction. So it's a slightly different thing. But now by association, you got journalists doxing and, like freezing bank accounts and, retaliatory measures that are just insane. Now, this is where you need to know about emergency powers, because in an emergency, there's different rules. Okay. But this is where people's heads need to fucking get straight, because the battle is not so much in the policy at the time. Okay. In policy, there's going to be shit that needs to be done in an emergency that needs to be temporary, okay? Like mask mandates, vaccine mandates, those things. They're necessary, but they're temporary. And what you should be organising for, and I think that's what's happening a lot now, is that we need to be making sure that it stays temporary. Okay, and that's the thing, is like you make sure that this stays temporary. And that's why when that mask stuff first hit with the pandemic, and I started to see some of these people, like authoritarian types, being empowered by this fucking mask thing, where they're like, you're going to like it and not fucking, it's like, whew. all right, I understand that that's a fear response for you, but we got to keep an eye on that thing. But we should still wear it. You should still wear it because it makes fucking sense to do so. See, and then there's those dumb shits that just died in a fucking fire and go, oh, libertarian. It's like, well, no, you're unproductive. You're burning it to the ground because you don't understand the difference between like exceptional circumstances and real circumstances. You also don't see your own fucking privilege over these things because we're here to, like, shut the fuck up. Okay. That stuff. Okay. But what we've got here, so this is an example. So when the railroad went down, the ACCC said, okay, well, we got this long-standing view that Coles and Woolworths are not to touch each other or meet with each other or fucking, collude in any way, shape or form in terms of price, because, to prevent price fixing and that sort of stuff, especially around food. Okay, they're not allowed to, it's quite heavily regulated. But what they've done in the last couple of weeks is waive that and say, you know what? Because of the exceptional circumstances, Coles, Woolworths can work together. Okay, you guys, because, obviously you've got to get a large haul of stuff. You got to get a lot of stuff. You got to sort of, make sure that people can, eat. So what we'll do is we will waive that temporarily so that, things can be achieved. And this is, again, it's a good microcosm example of other things. Okay, which is that then there's people going, well, you could oppose that on principle and go, well, I'm against fucking antitrust in general. And that's that. And it's like, well, okay. Good luck. People need to eat. Okay, it's the same thing with the pandemic and the, context matters for these things. And this is the problem with Wikipedia fucking dickheads being absolute about extremes and rights. It's like, yeah, you could be you could be correct. You're technically, absolutely, 100% correct. However, okay, we need to also be aware with the convoy thing, there's protest, but there's also, it's been co-opted by people who are trying to fucking push far-right shit, okay? Now the media's using that as a way to securitize everyday people, but this is where that double down is a problem because at the end of the day, that exists, okay? This is what happened with the culture war stuff with the trans thing and stuff, which is that all you do, you need to be able to distance yourself, acknowledge reality, acknowledge the facts, acknowledge the data, which is that, a large portion of people are working class, fed up, there's lots of reasons for it. There's a small portion who are fucking using that anger to push for fucking far right, like really fucking dangerous shit. So to turn around and go, oh, they're just working class people and the government are fucking, oppressing people. Yeah, that's kind of fucked up. But they're trying to fight this. This is one of those whack-a-mole problems where in order to fight this fucking, fascist takeover, there's a lot of false positives. But again, and this is why I keep saying it's precarious. And there's a lot of people making a lot of money on all sides of this fucking conversation saying that, do you think Justin Trudeau's a Nazi? A fascist? No. Do you think he's authoritarian? Probably. But that's the nature of neoliberal power these days. They all think they're fucking, they think they know better. But again, if you're charitable, there's interests there. They want people to get back to work. There's a practical interest. They're not necessary, and they're thinking about the optics. They're thinking about re-election. They're thinking about other things. It's not necessarily as black and white as you think it is. Okay? Now, from a policy point of view, is much like this, like waiving of anti-competition laws. Okay, well, I'm going to give you 3 months. And if I will come and basically you say, well, if you try any fucking funny business, I will throw the book at you. That's what you do. And then you wait the 3 months, and if they try anything, you follow through and throw the book at them. Okay? Exceptional circumstances. Now, if Coles and Woolworths suddenly find a way to argue with this ongoing fucking supply chain problem that they can collude while this happens, or that they can somehow use that way to, to expand. See, the problem is it's not so much about the letter of the law. It's about lawyers and corporate interests that can expand the reach and expand the interpretation of laws that were intended in good faith. Okay, so much like the Patriot Act, that was pretty clear. Even if you didn't, subscribe to the idea that, America did nothing wrong there, which is not true. Even if you were like, okay, well, they needed to be able to sort of deal with the terrorist threat, you can see how that, people consent to the idea, and then it gets repurposed in legal arguments and fracturing taxonomy. And what do you mean by that word? What do you mean by that word? What does this word mean? Because slippery cunts focus on definitions and technicalities so they can do heinous shit, okay? Most people go, that's not what we fucking meant. You know what we meant. You're taking the piss. And this is why this whole Twitter thing with the haggling over details and haggling over taxonomy, and it's all bad people. It helps bad people because they give you an argument. Like if you watch this gender fucking shit, right? And you'll see, like, anybody who's trying to win hearts and minds against this beast, okay? You see your arguments repurposed back to you, okay? This happens all the time because they're measuring it. They're reading it, okay? You don't think that this sophisticated fucking campaign isn't like being measured and A/B tested? You're naive. So anything that gets traction or, is measurable in any way in terms of an argument, they will come up with a counter message and counter messaging in order to persuade. They're sort of applied psyops. And psyops is, marketing is basically fucking psyops depending on how you look at it, right? And so this is why after the last couple of years, I've just come to the conclusion that all I can do is sit and talk. I'm not a I'm not a fucking not a presenter, TV presenter. I don't fucking know what I'm doing. I can barely do lights, okay? But I have, I understand that there's also emergency situations and different circumstances for things. Things change and move. And I think that if there's one thing that, if you've seen this and you're watching or whatever, if you're watching, I can't see how you would because this is horseshit and it's boring because I haven't really been focused today. But if there's one takeaway, it is that I would be suspicious of anybody who is certain on anything. Because if life is one thing, especially in the current environment, there's lots of things, lots of it depends. Okay? People have a go at me for watching Jimmy Dore or watching Sam Cedar or watching whoever or watching Joe Rogan. Whatever. It's like, well, first of all, I don't give a fuck because I'm only watching them, okay? Who I watch is nobody's fucking business. Second of all, if you think that I'm so fucking stupid that I can't watch something and know what is fucking happening, then you're the problem. Because you think I'm stupid and you've underestimated me. I can watch whatever the fuck I want and I know what things are and I know facts, okay? This is why I feel like I should be probably distilling some reasonable shit and distilling some of these things for people because I can see through the bullshit and I see where the gaps are. Anyway, also people are fucking radicalized. Anyway, I see multiple points of view and I can explain sort of where people are coming from most of the time. Now, so, first of all, what you watch on YouTube is not your fucking politics. Policy is politics, okay? Twitter isn't politics. It influences it, yes, unfortunately, but that's only because journalists are retarded and selfish and underpaid and fucking, shills. You don't have any fucking weight in politics unless you're actually participating in the political process, okay? I'm sorry, but fucking hell. Journalists have quite a bit of power, but, your power exists at the ballot box, and that's all I care about, the ballot box. We've got an election coming up. I want people to know they're being lied to and bullshitted to and propagandized. That's all I care about. Okay? And because I know that structurally I'm not going to actually get any reach, I'm just going to try to appeal to those that do watch me that, just fucking Jesus Christ. Who the fuck thinks that American YouTubers are anything anyway? Fucking hell. Like, there are other countries, first of all. Second of all, right, like, even in America, like it's fucking poisonous. The Politico media complex is poisonous. Okay. It's all theatre. It's all bullshit. It's all for clicks and ad dollars. And, you know, most people are not civically engaged. Most people are not politically literate. That's a fact. So all I'm trying to do is get one person, because I happen to also know the numbers, which is that a very small portion of people are interested in politics when it stops becoming tribal and about fucking, you know, most people are more interested in, like, you know, culture wars shit because it gives them a chance to fucking make money. First of all, make money. But second of all, to, like, you know, engage in like avoidance and not have to look at themselves and look at their politics and, you know, all that sort of deep stuff. Okay. Also, I know politics. If you actually understood it, you'd find it fucking boring. I do. I love politics. Okay. Still boring. Hard work. Spent 20 years. Actually, when I graduated in 2002, 20 years ago. That's how long I've had a politics degree for. Okay. I know quite a bit. Everyone thinks I'm an idiot, but I also know the numbers. I also know that only about 5% of people actually know the difference between levels of government. Okay? So that's where, you know, when people are policing, like, you think a YouTuber fucking determines you? It doesn't. Policy does. Outcomes do. And meanwhile, you're sitting here arguing about fucking Marvel versus fucking DC bullshit. Iron Man versus fucking Batman. Who gives a fuck? I care about the policy that's being passed. Now, what I would be doing is making sure that in the next year or two, as we sort of go back to normal, which is back to being fucked in the ass, that, you know, the concentration of real estate ownership gets looked at. Okay, we start to pass laws around fucking corporate ownership of rental properties. We start to look at market manipulation. We start to look at, rolling back some of these emergency powers, rolling back the powers of people, who, you know, the ability to mandate vaccines, because it's still it is still a choice. There's no mandate here. It's a choice. It's fucking choice architecture. The government always does that shit. You can do this or this, okay? You can still get groceries. You can still do stuff. You just can't go to a fucking restaurant. Sorry. Okay, so what? All right, cry me a river, okay? But again, you make sure that stuff, there's checks and balances in court, okay? This is why opposing legislation is, first of all, pointless, because most of these decisions happen in the courts. We're going through a period of transition where, you know, there's lack of clarity. We've got fast changing process. We've got emergency powers. We've got lots of things happening at once, economic forces, and you know, the internet has just, you know, poured jet fuel on a lot of this dysfunction and stuff. And people still think that the internet's where they can get reliable information. And that's the only thing. And I can cut off that slice and say, well, that's not the case. Okay. Because I've been around long enough to know that that's not the case. Because if that was the case, then I'd have 1 million YouTube subscribers rather than fucking whatever the fuck I've got. I don't know. Don't pay attention. Because I could actually have just, you know, not with this stream. And I know people will just go, oh yeah, she's just like salty because she's not. It's like, no, it's not. I'm just trying to figure out what works for me, how I can make a living and have a house and, you know, all those sorts of things like anybody else. Okay. I have a love-hate relationship with this whole thing, especially lights. I'll try to fix it. But you know, like, again, you get what you pay for. But, you know, it's just like, okay, so where's your focus? Is it on your writing is it your hot take on a situation you don't know anything about, have no way of verifying and no way of actually providing anything other than one side of information to people because you don't know, and causing more problems by sharing bullshit than you are by actually, you know, just not saying anything at all? Or what was the other thing? You know, what are you doing? What are you doing? Okay. Are you actually considering things like the fact that we've got a fight on our hands? Every Western country, and, you know, and also others, we have a fight for the undoing of emergency powers. Okay, that's the big fight that's coming here. Is, you know, we need to make sure that we're not in another situation with like this Patriot Act sort of. We've got to learn from that. which is that, we're coming out of COVID, whether you like it or not, shut the fuck up, don't care. We're on the home stretch, okay? In terms of policy, okay? I don't give a fuck about your personal fucking whatever, about borders or whatever. I don't care. I'm so tired of it. And it's okay to be tired of it. Tired of your shit. So we're on the home stretch of that. So what we've got to make sure is not so much about fighting the fucking actual passage of that legislation, because in most societies it's understood that emergency powers exist and that's a thing. Americans are stupid because they can't tell the difference between an emergency and a fucking day-to-day like news cycle, and that's part of their fucking problem, is because, but for most of us, okay, we understand that these things were temporary. They are, should be as short as possible, and that's where your energy should be, which is in making sure that we are now rolling back some of those temporary measures, holding those power to making sure that, the government are held to account, and also that they're not like starting to have these far-reaching sort of power, stretching out and misuse of like powers that they established during the pandemic to, silence protests that they don't like. Okay, this concerns me. Okay, now one thing I will say about our Prime Minister is that he has pretty much supported most of this right to protest, which again, I fucking hate the guy, but I think I think I have more faith in our political leaders than others, but that's mostly because they're just a Liberal government, and that's what they're right. They govern according to how they would govern, and it's I wouldn't be surprised, like people, again, it's that whole alienation thing where people are blaming state governments and, the food shortage on the Premier, or they're displacing all that anger for policies that have been, set in stone for decades, like Coles and Woolworths being able to, centralise their supply chains, with no consideration for the fact that, there might be a flood, or, no consideration for, no support for sort of local supermarkets that have been driven out of business, all of those sorts of structural problems. And this is why, your hot take on Ukraine is not really wanted right now, because I think I'm slightly more concerned with you actually. Some people could have spent the last 2 years actually studying and learning how these structures work so it doesn't happen again, and preparing for the real battle, which is the next 5 years, where we make sure that these fucking overreaching pandemic powers are fucking reversed. Okay. So this habitual checking in and QR code stuff, surveillance, mass bannings, censorship, collusion between corporations and state, that there's a role to play for that in terms of security. But when that threat ends, so does that fucking power. And that's the thing that, and because everyone's so fatigued and so polarized and so fucking melted in the head, that people are just now going to they just get so fatigued by it that we don't end up voting a government that is committed to the same thing, which is that transition back. Okay. I don't give a fuck about what, I just can't care about individual fucking bills. First of all, in Australia, because it usually gets sorted out in the courts. That's what they do. Politicians get elected and they pass bills in order to get re-elected. But, the real law happens in the courts, and real, it's interpretation and stuff of the law. Okay, we're seeing that in Scotland with the gender stuff. It's like, goes to the court and they go, yeah, that's not what they meant, cunt. Fucking, nah. That's what happens. That's the courts. Anyway, this was a really rambly stream. I'm not sure if I actually said anything coherent. I'm sorry about the lighting. I was trying to do something where I can actually control the lights, but now it's too bright. I need a different lens and I need better lights. I need to be able to pay for different lights and stuff. And it's just like, this setup doesn't work, but it is what it is. Get what you pay for. I'm also, just so you know, if you have made it through, I am developing the new, I think I've also, again, I'm fine, okay, but I'm just, I'm going through a bit of, I'm feeling all of this, because when you're one of the few people that actually knows what's going on, and watching everybody just completely not focusing on the right in the right areas, but also watching people lose hope. Because even though I always make sure I say that it's just precarious. It's precarious. And this stuff only happens with our consent. And so this is why you have to make sure that you are focused in the right areas. And the battle that I feel is coming in the next few years, like I said, is making sure that we make it very clear that some of these things were temporary. Okay? Because I worry that people are going to get complacent now, think that that's settled. Like politics is never settled because you can't change course. If it's cyclical, it's going to go in two different directions. And so, and one direction is pretty fucking horrible and pretty catastrophic. Okay? I mean, we may avoid war, we may avoid nuclear war, but I mean, is it worth it? Really? When you don't have any rights left, when you have no autonomy, when you have no freedom of thought, is it really worth it? I'd rather have the fucking bomb on my head. And that's the existential threat that we face. It's not just nuclear war, it's not just environmental catastrophe, but it is our ability to be fully self-actualized humans that aren't harvested. But also, the only people that are talking about this problem are people that are also lying to you about fascism and fascio-communism and whatever the fuck gobbledygook Lindsay's on about. Or Tim Pool, they're just making money. They're funded by the far right in the US, okay? I don't give a fuck. That is not, again, many things can be true at once, okay? Watch where their money comes from, okay? They're bullshitting you for money, okay? But I don't know. Anyway, no one's really watching me anymore anyway because I've managed to piss everyone off. I piss off all the woke people because at the end of the day, it's funny actually because you know what? I know how many people are actually really fucking interested in real politics. It's indicated by the audience. Okay, I'll tell you that now. And I'm not saying, again, it's not a self-fulfill. I'm not, I'm not rationalizing here. I'm saying it's in line with theory. It's in line with political theory that when you start adding complexity and you start adding length and you start, I waffle at length, but you get what I'm saying. When you start actually saying, hey, you know what? You might be wrong on some things, even if you're a part of a tribe. No tribe's 100% correct. And quibbling over fucking theory is actually a waste of time in a practical sense. It helps you to understand where people are coming from and the worldview, but that's about it. Okay, it's a framework for disagreement. It's not the disagreement. Okay, the framework gives you a basis in which to argue your point, not necessarily to fucking choose the right one. It's not Coke versus fucking Sprite. Okay, pick a side, sports team. It's no, that's not political theories are not sports teams, and you don't get to I never liked sports and I don't fucking like that either because it's adversarial and tribal, and this is where things get very ugly very quickly. Now I talk about culture war shit because it might get people interested, but it hasn't, because what I've done is I've gone and managed to fucking piss off literally everybody somehow by saying something, or not playing this YouTube for this cam girl for clicks game that everyone plays. And I've told and basically used myself as an experiment and as a test case to see if you can actually do these things, where the money is, where the audience is, and the audience is very much in reactionary content, whether it's woke reactionary or fucking right-wing reactionary. Nobody sits around and listens. Joe Rogan's still reactionary, okay, in some ways. I both things can be true. You can support him and like him and think he's good, and you can still think he's reactionary. Okay? But it's, at the end of the day, this has got to have policy behind it. And the real thing is, let's see, will Coles and Woolworths try to scope creep that little temporary thing about, price fixing? Will Facebook and Twitter use their fucking temporary ability to censor everybody? Will the US government use this as a test case to like silence all dissent against their fucking corporations? Will the trans lobby, you know, the transhumanists, that fucking cult, okay, not trans people, transhumanists, different things. You know, will they get their wish of fucking eradicating women and putting babies in all fucking test tubes and, you know, genetically engineering the fucking master race? Techno fucking that fascism. Jesus fucking Christ. Okay. Will patriarchy and capitalism fuse to wipe out women? You know, I'm not saying they will. I'm saying we got to fight that shit because that's the moves. That's the problem, is that there's no one fight. It's an ongoing fight, much like being me. You know, the fight's never won. You never reach your goal, okay? And if anything, the second you get a bit complacent is when you fucking backslide, okay? And that's where it's like, well, I'm trying to figure out where I'm best needed. I just do what I want to do now and hope for the best. I am doing, okay. You've got me in a fucking depressive mood, so I'm a bit more like dark than usual. You know, I'm fine. I didn't actually have anything really to say today. It was more just a general whinge because I was feeling fucking down. But generally, I am actually working on the new platform, it's a platform I can sell to others. Okay, so it is actually, if you've got a community, then I can just, you know, it's a template that I can just like replicate, right? That's my doorbell. Yeah, hang on, I'm streaming. Paul! Hang on, one sec. Fucking door people. Anyway. Oh well, see? Hawkers are back. Door to door's back. Awesome. Oh, fuck me. Okay. The charity door knockers are back, asking you for money. Capitalism prevails. Anyway, so no, I'm just having a moan. Anyway, so I'm going to go. I've been around too long. I don't expect anyone to sort of check in and watch this stuff, but it's okay. So what we'll do. Okay, that's right. So I have built the tech, the rapscally tech. It's sitting there. I built it, and then I was like, I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing? I can't afford it. I got to figure out a way to make money. So I'm just going to sell courses on running freelance business, you know, account management, you know, all that sort of stuff. Because there's people who like need help with that. I don't want to do business coaching and stuff because I think that that's predatory, but I can do some sort of, you know, few hour courses, how to be a responsible influencer. Okay, so that's one course that I'm actually writing on at the moment. So it's a quick summary on, you know, if you're going to start a YouTube channel or start this influence, it's just a crash course in ethical stuff and user experience and what's sort of happening without it being like, you know, really too dry, but just like really where the research is and how small things that influencers can do to, you know, reduce harm, you know, in this situation where they're the people that have the power. So, you know, and also some courses for audiences on how to like critical thinking skills and shit. But I don't know about that. But yeah, and probably some sort of corporate workshops on some of the stuff that I've talked about, because at the end of the day, you know, no one's really incentivized to not use this machine anymore. So, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to. See, the thing is, I don't. Yeah, and I'm also just studying, so I'm just trying to figure out how to get answers. I may still finish up the site because I've only got a couple of units to go before I actually, you know, but I just couldn't do it. I kept taking breaks. And I was like, when I keep stalling on things, there's usually a reason for it. So I'm just, you know, we'll try something else, but. Yeah, this is just where, you know, the industry has just shifted and changed and things have changed. And I'm not someone to moan necessarily, even though I have been moaning, but I'm not. So I generally tend to just get really down and really, you know, like I'll be in a fucking state of tears and like, what the fuck? what's happened to everything, and, you know, blah, 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 blah. And then I come up next day, bounce back with a plan, you know. So it's just this one has been, I've had to make several different types of plans because none of my older types of plans have been effective, which is that, you know, I haven't been able to build an audience as much as I would have liked to be able to be self-sustaining. And I can't do client work and this because, you know, I can't do corporate work and this. And I also can't, because they, you know, they kind of don't go together. And, you know, so I'm just trying to get it. Again, it's not, it's going to be all these people with advice. It's like, well, no, you don't understand that I'm not new. I'm new for me, doing it for me, but I know, you know, I know what works and doesn't work already. Okay. So if I'm not trying something and not doing something, it means that I know. Okay. It means I know it doesn't work. Again, I've been around for a while, not a fucking idiot. Okay. So, that's where it's like, it's harder and harder to make this work. And also just, you know, I think that's just, again, it's just part of also being slightly older than everybody else, being sort of a few years ahead of where the conversation is in the industry. I always have been, because I was on the internet younger and earlier, but I was older when it happened, you know, like, so it's, you know, like it's not, I see writing in the, I'm always sort of 5 to 10 years ahead of where I think things are heading, and no one listens to me until it happens. And then by the time it happens, there's a whole bunch of bros that have stolen my shit and they get the credit. You're seeing that now with this woke shit. Like, a second you're watching it all be used as a weapon, you're getting everyone shared, like, you know, that actually started following me and stole my shit, and I told them what it was, and now they're reselling it and repackaging it for the to make money. And it's like, well, no, okay. But, you know, that is what it is. You know, that's just, again, multiple reasons. Partially being female, being Australian, not being American or British doesn't help. Time zones don't help. But also, you know, not being, also actually being knowledgeable doesn't help. And being flexible and open-minded doesn't help either, because I've been quite happy to change my mind with new information. I'll change my mind on a fucking stream. I'll go, okay, I say that, then I'll think something through and I'll go, oh, I don't know if that's a full truth, or oh, you think it through and you go, no, I'll come out with a different view. And there's not really room for that in social media land anymore. So, and then, you know, obviously in the real world, you know, I'm physically limited because I've got, you know, illness, but also just geographically, you know, like remote work and all that sort of stuff. And I don't want to do, you know, that kind of shit. That's corporate bullshit. And I don't want to be part of the problem. The things that I'm qualified for, I can't do ethically. And also, like, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I'll figure it out. I haven't really applied for anything. But again, it's like, whatever. Unless you're willing to go and do radicalization research, right? Which I'm not. I was going to. I started. But I just see it being used. Every time I put theory out there, every time I say something about what this is and about how it's used and some counter arguments, I see those counter arguments taken and spun back as counter messaging. And so this is the nature of that beast, which is that when you're A/B testing everything and A/B testing reactions and A/B testing conversations, and you're monitoring it, over time you'll see those conversations come back to you, but in a different way. It's like that opposition handling thing, okay? It's very strange to do, so then it's very difficult to navigate, because when you have information about something that is useful to somebody, they will use it, okay? That's been my whole career at the moment. Which is that, you know, people, like I said, psychopaths with money will just take whatever the fuck they want. And until we talk about that, and how things are used and how they function, you have to kind of opt out of the debate. You're not just sharing your opinion anymore. You're sharing arguments that people are going to repurpose and use to make their case, you know, for bad shit. That's this, you know, that's kind of where we're at. And again, it's not a conspiracy, it's just how that playbook works. And I don't even know how to begin to solve this unless I'm talking to influencers on one side about how to like vet and fact check and check their information, because but journalists aren't even doing that shit. Why would a fucking makeup beauty blogger do that shit? Okay. But to really get a sense of like, get a feeling for the responsibility that they have towards their community. But also like for everyday users who are already fucking radicalized and don't want to hear it. So really, and also I can't make enough money to stop and just write the books that I want to write and do the stuff that I want to do, because, you know, all of the algorithms are against me now. So it's because I'm not doing outrageous shit. It's like, see this sort of self-perpetuating thing, and the universities don't want me as an academic because I thought that I backed the wrong horse. I was wrong. I thought that if I had more influence, and I could always build influence by writing a book and focusing on my brand and doing that was going to be more effective than being in a university. I was wrong about that, because now I find myself at 43 having to fucking do another master's because my other one's too old, and like, you know, and I can't do a PhD until it's like a big blocker, and I can't do it. So you see what I'm saying? Like, it's like, okay, lots and lots of like, you know, and again, you know, woman, working class, no, you know, like all of that sort of stuff, cost of living going up. And it's like, okay, well, what the fuck do I do? Do I just quit everything? Do I just quit everything? You know? So anyway, I don't know. I'm not going to quit. It's rhetorical. Sorry about that. But anyway, I think it's important to talk when things are just up in the air and uncertain. And I'm not going to sit there and peddle fucking answers and uncertainty and short clips and, you know, rhetoric and all of that sort of stuff. Because I also, one thing that I do know to be true is that anyone who's in my crew, the thing that they value most about me, even if that's shrinking, and even if you may not attract a, you know, engaged, you know, rich, you know, attract the money and the clicks and all that stuff, you may not attract that part. The crew that I have tends to stick around forever. And they also tend to see themselves and seek comfort and, get comfort in knowing that they're not the only one who feels this way. And they see me on a fucking live stream, just like, you know, being honest. And I think that, you know, not editing is, you know, a good way to show that honesty. Being willing to just fuck up and say whatever the fuck I want is honest. Being willing to just write a stupid Twitter thread that isn't like edited and I'm just working through ideas. I think that that's a strength. Now, most people don't see it that way. I've had people go, okay, you know, well, are you okay? And it's like, yeah, I'm just fucking riffing like I've always done. And it makes people feel better because, you know, people feel this way and that people feel like they can't be wrong out loud and they can't, you know, just talk about things. Now, I'm not saying your hot take on Ukraine doesn't fit within there as well. I'm just saying that things, you know, again, there's two different competing ideas here, which is that, you know, things are precarious, so it's worth thinking about. And we're just thinking, see, that's the problem, is that everything's got a call to action now. Everything's got an agenda, and I just want to talk about stuff that might be diametrically opposed and yet still both true. Right? That's you know, that's the nature of the beast, especially at the moment, which is that I can agree that, you know, getting to 90% vaccination and agree with masks and agree with that shit, but also go, no, that's temporary. I can also fucking think kale's gross and think that kale's necessary, but not fucking go out of my way to eat kale. Like, they're both true. You know, like things can be like more interesting when things are equally true but conflicting. But that dissonance is something that I think we need to be more aware of in ourselves, and also that need to quell that dissonance and behave terribly because of it. Okay? We've all got it. If you've got all the answers and you think you know everything, then you're not, I'm sorry, but you don't. I don't. Okay? I'm just a person who just, you know, trying to figure shit out like everybody else. And I rode this internet wave, and I had one worldview I had one perspective on this, which was that the internet was a miraculous way for people to sort of, you know, carve a life for themselves outside of their physical limitations. And now I'm seeing that is now a dream that is dead and is not accessible to anybody that is not wealthy, powerful, or had already sort of, built an audience 5 years ago. And so that's, or willing to talk shit for money, right? Willing to, like, they're basically like a cam girl, right? Or televangelist types, right? And I don't give a fuck. Hurt feelings, I don't care. There's no way to be organic and successful in this anymore. Anyway. And then they're, oh, why don't you just practice talking more? Okay. Around what? Okay. So I'm expected to be a lighting engineer, a sound engineer, a camera person, a fucking, an expert in my field, polished, perfect teeth, perfect makeup, perfect lighting, have a house that's big enough to hold a studio, also be able to spend 3 days editing clips every time I'd stream, and, but also I shouldn't expect to make any money to be able to afford to do any of that. See the conflict? Oh, no, you just don't work hard enough. Yeah, okay, fair enough, my guy. Do you know why you have time to do those things? Because you don't read. And you don't actually have expertise in what you're talking about. Because anybody who makes 5 videos a day knows how long it takes and knows how much research takes. So to be good at research and good at the TV shit and good at the presenting shit, those are opposed to each other. Okay. So especially if it's multidisciplinary, like there's exceptions, of course. I'm making generalizations, but like the best people will be the people that don't have huge audiences and are actually doing their fucking job. If you can do 6 videos a day or whatever Tim Pool does, he's not reading that shit. He's not looking into it. Okay. It takes me 3 days to prep for most things, believe it or not. Not today. This is what happens when you don't prep. But, I'm saying, like, I don't know what people expect. Maybe, again, as a user experience person, I understand that maybe we made it look too easy. Maybe we made things a little too frictionless for people, where you think that everything that is well produced or, seamless on the front end, this veneer, this superficial like veneer, that because it looks easy, that it is easy. But there's a lot that goes into this shit. Like someone was on Twitter yesterday this morning, oh, Bill Maher versus John Oliver. And I'm like, what's that? You know that they use the same 50 fucking writers for every comedy variety show. They've all got the same packets. They work out of the same packets, the same people, the same writers, and they all just have a different front person. It's the same people. There's no verses. It's artificial. Behind the scenes, there's a whole team of people that are the same fucking team. And they're all rich kids, or got lucky, or had, there's a number of different circumstances there that led them there. For people to actually do everything that it takes a team, and it takes a village, and it takes resources, and it takes luck. It's a combination of things. Okay, and that's, I think, the problem is that, the optics of the dude in his basement. Yeah, the dude in his basement that does 5 videos a day, when I'm talking about concepts that I know personally take days of prep. Okay, to even get to the bottom of issues. And this guy, seriously, and he makes millions of dollars because he peddles reactions, and he peddles. I've thought about doing reaction videos, like doing a reaction stream, spending 3 hours, and you just send me videos and stuff. I really wanted to react to the fucking James Lindsay thing. That's bad. Oh, it's just bad, but what's the point? Because the problem with retarded fucking political takes, I'll tell you now, the problem with retarded political takes is that this is why they work, by the way. This is how it works, is that the thought-terminating cliche stuff, is that if you say something ridiculous but feels true, you are then on the back foot and have to disprove a falsehood. Sorry, But you've got to basically bring so for me to turn around and go, look, this communo-fascism concept that you're talking about is ridiculous. Okay? First of all, you're completely leaving out the United States foreign policy, and the fact that they make the stupidest argument. Okay, someone will make a ridiculously stupid statement. Anyone who's been participating in the gender debate will know this, where people will just say clownfish. And I sit there and I watch Emma and like people who are biologists going no, and here's a fucking multiple like points, well argued, reasoned, and I sit there and I go, you should not have to argue this because it is a patently stupid fucking premise that humans are like clownfish. They're not the same. But also like, you know, like something like communo-fascism and fascio-communism. First of all, that's not like, because that's not a thing. It's capitalism or not. It's like, what the fuck? It's degrees of fascism gone, capitalism gone wrong, right? And it's just, anyway. But for me to line by line, might dispute that. Like it's like God's real. Oh, it's just a matter of faith. Okay. No, but I can tell you this people, atheists who've done the atheist argument versus, you know, God and stuff. You're on the back foot and you have to put in 10 times more work to argue against something stupid than you do against something thought out and intelligent. Because unfortunately, those who are like engaging in these discussions and conversations aren't well versed in fucking fallacies and will move the bar and do all these techniques. This is what, you know, like quite specific techniques around thought terminating cliches and moving the bar and quibbling and, you know, straw mans and all that sort of stuff. That's on purpose because most people don't know those stuff in detail. I'm not even really that coherent. Well, okay, I'm not an expert in logic. Again, that's a philosophy thing, okay? You can't be expert at everything. Oh yeah, why aren't you an expert in that? Before I give you $2 because I fucking cost more than $2 to fucking do work for you. That's why. But like it's you know, like it's just that people, I think one thing people need to understand that it's harder to argue against a headline and it's harder to argue against a heightened state of emotion. It's also harder to argue against bullshit that feels true than it is to argue about, differences of opinion and philosophy. Now these fucking terminology and stuff I don't know. Maybe we're in a position where hopefully we get some sense where Wikipedia is not considered, or people like YouTubers, maybe the grift is on its way out. I hope it is. Maybe it's just that same tension that, again, history repeats, that same tension that we had with the printing press that is happening at scale with the internet where, you know, this yellow journalism shit that happened like went around the printing press and eventually some standards were put in place. And that's what where my focus might be, is making sure that we have those standards in. So at least those, even if like, because you're not going to get any fucking, there's no pressure from the top down to address dark patterns or unethical influence or, the type of stuff that I talked about because they benefit from it. Like we'll see, like this woke shit is a perfect, this COVID shit and, radicalization and terror stuff. It's all useful when you're trying to escalate tensions for geopolitics, right? Or corporations or sell units or, have a docile, well-trained audience, okay, who just throws money at you because you fucking, you're not giving answers, but you're just, punching the other guy. But, at some point we should maybe put some standards in place, which is that, we can put ground up, you can put it from, I've always believed that the little guy can decide. Like in business, I've always said small business is where I could be a socialist because I run my own fucking little state. I can run it like I can't be in government. I can't be a massive corporation, but I can be a socialist when I run a small business. Okay. And I can be, I can operate, I can build that culture. And it's the same thing with influencers. If I can reach influencers who, small, and maybe even larger ones who understand that there's got to be some guidelines around this stuff. You can create a movement. And also that bottom-up pressure from people, consumer pressure to not use these techniques. Again, fuck off to BitChute. Don't care. Because I don't think it doesn't end well with censorship. So we've got to figure out a way forward, and it always comes back to fucking nobody caring about politics as long as, I wish people would fucking stop using serious conversations as content. But anyway, I suppose I'm doing the same thing. But I'm not trying to I am trying to make money, but fucking we have to make money. It's different. I wish money didn't fucking exist. I wish I could just do what I want to do. Anyway, I'm sure we all feel the same way. Anyway, I'm going to go. I don't know if no one was chatting, so I'm not sure, but I see that a few people were watching. But anyway, I'm going to go. This is probably not very rewatchable, so I'll say that in the description. But, I'll be back probably tomorrow morning. I don't know. See how I feel. I've really, honestly, I'm a bit burnt out by everything, and I'm trying to just finish the platform and finish the website and finish all of those things that, feels a bit futile. But at least if I've built something that I can show as a piece of tech and stuff, then I might be able to sell that on to others as well. But also what I could do is start to build tech that's inbuilt. I built, ethical thinking and making, there are ways to build fandoms that aren't echo chambers and do it the right way. Problem is that there's no money in it because the VCs only want fucking, ads and data. So selling a platform that doesn't do that shit is impossible unless you're already rich. Again, already rich or already famous. It's all fucking rigged. So anyway, or have a dick. Anyway, I love you. You can tell I'm in a good mood today, huh? Fucking the real fight's ahead now, which is the undoing. Not the doing, the undoing. Okay? Don't let him do it. I love you. Take care. Thank you for your precious life seconds. I'm sorry that this was a fucking disaster. I wasn't really prepared. But anyway, it was the Cabbages that did it. Food will be coming soon. It's got probably about a month. It's hitting the shelves. But, it's stressful. But anyway, I hope we're on the tail end of this stuff. But there's no one fucking problem. There's no one perpetrator. Everything's messy. And, I wish people would embrace the complexity and not try to control it and try to pretend that things aren't complex, whether it's war or fucking cabbage. But what are you going to do? Even me, watching me, I'm going to be good some days and, whip smart and interesting. And some days I'm just going to shit the bed and talk shit and be in a bad mood and sit here wondering what the point is. That's part of the human experience. Okay, I'm not going to sit and pretend that everything's okay when it's not, because I'm honest. Okay, that was the thing about masks that I realized, where whenever I go out with a mask on, I realize that I've been hiding, because I can hide my sadness unless I'm covering my eyes, and then I look like I'm fucking, upset. I look tired and, sad and angry sometimes and frustrated. And so and avoid eye contact. So it's like, oh shit. But I can hide it with a fucking, but yeah, it's harder with the mask. So I'm looking forward to those being gone. Anyway, I love you. I'm sorry about my dry face and my nose and everything, the foundations and shit and whatever. I love you. Learn from my example. I'm a badass. I'm not afraid to look bad or dumb and I'm none of those things. But I'm not afraid to look stupid or vulnerable or, have a bad day. And more people should do that. Don't trust people who never have a bad day, and don't trust people who always have answers. That's my life advice. Now, I'm recording the podcast soon, and it's all about the internet. I've got my questions. I've got my guests. I've got to line some up. It's going to be some famous, some not famous. So if you're not famous and want to talk to me about your relationship with the internet and, a little bit of fucking nerd shit, and ask me some stuff, then, because I'm going to try and put a little bit of advice and stuff in there as well for people who are curious, then, hit me up. I know that one person I know did say, oh, I want to be on it, and It's really exciting. So I'll only be announcing your first name, and you can use a username if you're not comfortable. But I want to get a more rounded understanding of how the internet is both the greatest thing on earth and the worst thing on earth, and how it's a mixed bag. And for everybody, much like people are good and evil, and, we're constantly fighting that. The internet's utility is constantly, it's both great and marvelous, and there's a flip side to everything that's good, and there's a flip side to everything that's horrible. And this pandemic, the flip side, might be that we can grow and learn. I doubt it. Every indication is proving that, but, we can learn and go, well, maybe we should build another railroad. Maybe, once bitten, twice shy. I don't think that's going to happen, because it seems like they're just back to normal. Oh, well, once in 200 years, not going to happen, except for climate change, probably in 5 years. Anyway, but I'm just saying, right, maybe we actually can learn from this and move forward and not do the exact same thing we've always done, which is escalate war and tensions and, tweet our hot takes. Maybe we can just decide to not do that and not participate and not be mules for the culture wars, and not give money to people who are lying to you to lie to you. That's a prostitute. They don't come, fellas. They don't like it. You pay them to pretend to like you. You pay them to lie to you, okay? That's a prostitute. Okay, so these YouTubers who lie for money, they're fucking prostitutes. And at least sucking dick is, there's something more honest in that. At least that doesn't hurt anybody, except, assuming you're not trafficked and there's consent. Doesn't fucking hurt anybody. Anyway, on that note, suck a dick. That's always my option. That's my next option. Anyway, I love you. Thank you for your precious life. Become a pervert patron, and I will definitely not do that. But I will appreciate it. Okay. I love you. Thank you for your precious life seconds. Stay well, stay sane, and I will talk soon. Bye.